Okay, this June 7th, 2017 school board meeting will come to order. Before we get started, I'd like to recognize our newest board member, Brian Cisneros. Welcome to the board.
Thank you.
Maybe if you could just say a couple words about your background.
I live in Lee, been in Lee since 2003, 2 kids in the school system, one finishing up second grade, going into third grade, started in the PEP program back when he was 3. My daughter is just finishing up 8th grade, going on to the high school, been involved with special ed since 2nd grade, so been very happy with the school system here and very excited to be part of the program and join the team and be part of the successful plan you guys have.
Thank you. Delighted to have you, Brian.
Thanks.
So could we have the approval of the agenda? And I would like to just suggest one change since there's going to be a Siemens presentation. If we just move that right up to the first district report, right up to the top of that, is that agreeable to everybody?
Yep.
Then they don't have to wait through.
Yep.
Okay. So with that change, could I have a motion to approve the agenda? Denise?
I motion to approve the agenda with the change.
Moved by Denise. Is there a second? Second by Al. Discussion? All those in favor, please raise your hand. 7 in favor, the student rep in favor. The agenda is approved as amended. Public comment? Bob?
Robert Barth, Lee. No good will come of this. But I do have copies. This will be about 2.5 minutes. No doubt most of you will feel I'm making a mountain out of a manure pile, and in some sense I am. But as a Jew and a citizen, I object to the board's recent decision to move, quote, the September 20th meeting in honor of Rosh Hashanah, unquote. I realize the final motion didn't mention Rosh Hashanah, but the original request makes the intent totally clear. It's a bit like Trump trying to reword his Muslim ban so it doesn't sound like what it is, a Muslim ban. Although no doubt enacted without ill intention, I feel it must have been voted upon without much thought. The Constitution provides that Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion with good reason. Pick out one religion for elevation in any way, large or small, and one creates the chosen over the less worthy, ostracized other. Why would the school board of what since 1968 I had always considered an otherwise enlightened community choose to violate one of the founding principles of our country? While you're at it, why not declare September 20th a school holy day holiday? What's the message to a Hindu or Buddhist or any believer in any of the 100 other religions, most with observed holy days? What might be the message to a young Muslim Palestinian American already subjected to numerous lifelong slights, whose Palestinian grandparents in the 1950s might have been displaced from their homestead, perhaps by my upper-middle-class Boston cousins who decided it would be real cool to move to Israel and live in a kibbutz? Why not? To quote them, Arabs are lazy as blacks, and they don't know how to take care of the land. Is your action but one of the many subtle ways our society creates homegrown radicals attracted to such groups as ISIS? Education above all other institutions should emphasize inclusiveness, not the selection of one tribe/religion to be honored above all others. Just because we have a thoughtless, ignorant, incompetent head of state, one would hope the school board would not feel the necessity of emulating him. I would respectfully ask the board to reconsider and reverse this ill-advised decision, which sends a terrible message to our diverse student body and community alike. I was going to say that if it didn't happen, I'd send a letter to the editor, but I think I will withhold that. Thank you.
Thank you.
I need to respond, I think, to that.
No, I don't. I'm not going to recognize you to respond to it.
All right.
We don't respond. Okay. Is there another comment?
Hello, I am Mary Ellen Webb from Lee, and I'm a teacher from Massway. And we understand at Massway that you are being presented tonight with a request for the tech integrator position at the elementary schools. And we would like you to know that as a staff at Massway, we fully support this position, and we look forward to all that this would offer to all of our students. Thank you.
Thank you. Other public comment? Hearing none, can we move on to the approval of the minutes? We need to approve the May 10th, 2017 workshop minutes. Denise?
I move to approve the May 10th workshop minutes.
Moved by Denise. Is there a second? Second by Al. Corrections, changes to that, Denise?
I just have it's pretty minor, but just for clarification, on the first page, about halfway down the page where it says Denise asked, what is a standard, what I was asking is what is the difference between a standard and what is a competency? So just to insert the words, the difference between.
So do you have that, Laura? Are there other changes? Hearing none. I'm sorry, do we have a motion on that?
Yeah.
Okay, motion, sorry. All those in favor, please raise your hand. 7 in favor.
I
Student rep abstains.
there.
You went there, that's right. Okay. We have a motion to approve the May 17th, 2017 regular meeting minutes. Denise?
I motion to approve the May 17th regular meeting minutes.
Second? Okay. Is there a second? Second by Al. The corrections?
I'd actually like to request that we postpone that. I missed half that meeting, and a lot happened at that meeting, and the video was just posted today, and I'd like to review the video before we finalize the minutes.
Okay.
And I'm fine with doing that, but one thing I think we need to add to it on page 6, if you want to go to that. And towards the bottom where we have the motion about implementing the plan, and the motion talks about keeping in kind of lines 1 through 4, and there's no context for that, so I think we need,
We need
to see...
to have those, all those, yeah.
Exactly. We need to see that so we are able to add understanding to that passage.
Do you have that, Laura? Those.
It's not so much a correction that from words, but we have a motion, there had been a plan that came before us that I think had 6 different bullet points that we were going to approve. And what we did is we made a change in line 5 of the 5th bullet point in that. And we just need to have what those original 6 bullet points were so we can see what we were approving and what the change meant. So if you go to your, what do you call it, the packet from the backup from our last meeting, that will be in that, and maybe just incorporate that into the note there.
I've got that in the minutes, Laura. You don't have to put it in today, just the directions, so that when we get it back to the office, we take that handout and put it into the minutes.
Okay. So Michael's requested to postpone the approval of these minutes till he can have a chance to review them. Would people be okay with it postponing?
Yeah, I'd like to have a chance to review the first half of the meeting that I missed before we...
Okay, please.
That's fine with me, but if we have corrections, should we go ahead and mention them now or hold on?
Why don't we go ahead and mention them
Okay.
now? Laura can put
Okay.
those in. That'll save us time in the next
Okay.
meeting. Okay, do you have?
So I have a correction, which is on page 3. It's where my comment about, I lost it. Oh, Denise, no, that's not it. Oh, yeah. Commented on the evening. So what I'd like it to read, the evening was actually the high school PTO sponsored event called The Places You Will Go. So I would just like to have that inserted in there to kind of clarify what evening I was talking about.
Okay.
And then I have one other.
Just make sure
oh,
Laura has
sorry.
that. Do you have that one, Laura?
Yeah, I talked about
Oh, you've
that.
talked about it. Okay.
And then one other one on page 4, at the bottom of the page, when it's talking about Maria, there's just a little grammatical. It says, it's appropriate, so I just suggest I'm sorry.
Think is what you're going to
Yeah, and it's, she doesn't think it's appropriate, because usually we have our minutes in third person. So I would just suggest that we say she doesn't think it's appropriate.
I don't think. The word think is left out, so after I don't, I'm putting the word think, and that takes care.
Right, well,
Right.
she,
Yeah.
instead of she, instead of I.
Is that right?
The above implementation for is so above, so you want to just change the number 5 in the minutes itself, and not refer to motion.
It's in the minutes.
I didn't see it.
I didn't see it in the minutes.
I'll go back to
I did.
No, we didn't get the one, we have a discussion, but we don't have
The 1 through 6.
the 1 through 6, right?
Okay, I'll double check that, thank you.
Okay. Okay, so I don't know, was there a motion to approve the minutes? Did somebody made
There
that,
was a
right?
motion, yeah.
Oh, yeah, I'll withdraw my motion.
Who seconded it?
I think I seconded, but yeah, I'm good.
Withdraw, okay. So we will then approve the, minutes. We'll have those come before us in the next meeting.
Thank you.
Okay. And then we had the manifest minutes of the 31st. Could I have a motion to approve those, Al?
I'll make a motion to approve the May 31st manifest minutes.
Moved by Al, is there a second? Seconded by Denise. Can't imagine there's too much discussion on this one. So there are only 4 of us there, so all those in favor, please raise your hand. Okay. I don't know if you can vote on the manifest
When
meetings.
you're not there.
You weren't there.
You vote
I'm
on
voting in
recommendation of the
approval
committee.
of the work that you did.
Yeah.
I think,
Okay,
I'm saying I trust you.
okay, I guess you can. 6 in favor, 1 abstention, and the student rep abstains.
So who abstained? Mike?
Brian?
Oh, Brian and Hannah.
Yeah. Okay. So with that, announcements, accommodations, comments from the district? Anyone? Nice.
So I know that Hannah Jane will probably speak to some of this, but I just want to invite everybody to graduation this Friday evening at 6 p.m. at the Lundholm Gymnasium at UNH. We're very excited for the class of 2017 to graduate. We also have baccalaureate tomorrow evening. We have had fabulous things happening at the high school, a lot of evening events, awards, senior art show, science showcase, all kinds of wonderful things going on in the high school. And we encourage people to take a look at the calendar and to stay connected with us in some of these different events. But again, we invite everybody to graduation, and that's this Friday at 6 o'clock at Lundholm Gymnasium.
Thank you, Suzanne.
Good evening, Carrie Vaish from Mastway. I just want to mention one exciting bit of news for Mastway and the PTO. We, as you know, for the last 2 years have been working diligently to fundraise for our playground project. We have been so close, and it really has been a community effort, thanking everyone who's donated time, effort, dollars also. But we were generously received an anonymous donation of $14,000, and that brings our total fundraising to $100,000, and we are ready to move forward with the installation of our playground this summer. So we are so thrilled with that. Yeah, thank you. I'd really like to say thank you to Katya Konier, Trista Fitch, Abby Aldous, and Sarah Farwell, our 4 parents, that have spent numerous hours getting this together, and we're all looking forward to the install this summer. Thanks.
Congratulations. Good
Thank
news.
you.
Others from the district? No? Announcements, accommodations, comments from the board? Okay.
As was just alluded to, of all the events that are occurring in our district, and it's hard for me to keep up with them, but 2 that I attended the performance of Into the Woods, which really displayed the talents of our high school students and a very impressive performance. And also really one of the favorite events that I attend, and it's kind of put on by the social studies department, and it has their kids kind of picking projects that they think that they could make a difference about, putting up beautiful poster boards, some of them raising money to do that, and kind of the array of interest in the students in these projects with environmental causes, social causes, things that they had passion for, local issues, sports. And just that whole project always is very inspiring to me and leads me to think that there is hope. And maybe the last point, I just want to thank Maria Barth for all those years she's been a member of our board. She always provided very valuable insight. She had a perspective, and as with the issue that was talked about tonight, and I respect our board chairman, I won't respond. We had differences of opinion. I always respected Maria's opinion. I think Maria helped to bring us to a better place. She challenged us, and her voice will be sorely missed on this board.
Thank you, Kenny. Denise?
Yes, I want to just respond to the very many showcases, musical performances. There's so much cool stuff that's been happening in the schools, and I've tried to get to as many of them as I can. The two that I would like to particularly mention was the science showcase at the high school, which was, I couldn't believe it was high school level work. It was just unbelievable. The quality of the projects, and again, a variety of different, environmental, and there was anatomy and physiology, some really cool projects involving, angles of bodies and different things. And the other project that I wanted to mention was the video that if people came in and saw running before our school board meeting, that was a project that was put together by 3 of Oyster River High School juniors, Emerson McManus, Katie Hopler, and Jesse Barker. The video is called Journey into the Madhouse, Nellie Bly's 10 Days of Insanity. And they put together this project for their U.S. history class, and it's actually going to a national competition now in Maryland. So that's like a really, really cool thing. So again, I just want to commend, all the students and all the teachers for all the hard work. And boy, it really made me proud to see all the sort of the culmination of all this work and all these different presentations over the last couple of weeks.
Al?
Yeah, I felt like last week was the tour of the district, and I got to go to a couple of really cool events. Sadly, I didn't get to see my second no-hitter live, but I got to go to the baseball game. And actually, it's really nice when you sit back on the hill back behind home plate. It's a great view. My only suggestion, by the way, is when we do put a scoreboard up there, that you guys put a pitch count, because that really does have an impact in high school in terms of pitchability the next day. So that's my suggestion from the sabermetrics thing. I got to also go.
Such a nerd.
So I got to go to the 7th and 8th grade art shows. And I think what's really impressive, I have a daughter who's going on to art school, and it's what one of the deans there said is working with as many different materials as possible is really a great thing. And if you looked at it, it's not just that kids are doing drawing or painting, but it's the vast amount of materials they work with in mixed media and all the different techniques they work at just really forms a great foundation. You can see their growth from 7th and 8th grade to the high school. And then the music band 6th, 7th, and 8th grade concert that they had was kind of wild, because at the end they did John Williams' Star Wars, and all of the kids came out. And it really gives you a sense of how big the music program has grown at the middle school. And that didn't even include the orchestra, so it was really kind of inspiring. And then last but not least was Dennis's retirement party, and it was really cool to see him get interviewed, the 4th grade interview. My kids have all gone through that. And it was just a really great outpouring, and I know parents who put that together did a great job. So it was a great tour of kind of all the interesting stuff.
I'd just like to second the remarks made about Maria. I think she contributed a tremendous amount to this board. I think we'll all miss her sense of humor, her stories about her pigs, her stories about her bees. But I think the most valuable thing I think she gave the board was, in my view, taking on the leadership in the first 2 years when all of us were totally unsure of ourselves, and she, I think, set a tone for the board at a very, very difficult time. And I think that was a tremendous gift to our district. And I think that without that, it would have been a rocky start, and it wasn't because of her. So we valued her, we listened to her, we certainly appreciated everything she brought to the board. She'll be missed. Others?
Can I quickly add? I should have mentioned the social studies presentation was Power of One. And just the other thing with the high school play, and a meeting ago or 2 meetings ago, we were commenting on the elementary school plays. And several meetings ago, we had a parent who talked about why don't we have a middle school play. And I just want to kind of tap down on that seed that that parent planted, because I think that would be a neat thing for our district as well.
Okay, district reports. So we start with the Siemens. Gentlemen?
Hello.
Hi.
Jim, do you want to, I know you guys have been talking about this, or Sue, maybe?
Sure.
I know
Do you want me to do an introduction?
Yeah, well, people wonder who the heck I am at this
sure.
point, yeah.
So over the course of the last 5 years, Siemens has been an incredibly great partner for the district. I should actually say 6 years, because it started the year before I got here. And you might recall that they've done tremendous energy work for us over that time period, including this high school, which was really significant in the sense that they discovered that the system was never balanced and was on pretty much 24/7. And they were able to correct that in the first year. And, you know, they had this amazing payback period, which everyone was in awe of. But if your machines are on 24/7, it isn't rocket science to figure out you're going to get a really fast payback. And, you know, but, you know, the fact is they're the ones who came in and set us on this course. Okay. And since then, we've done projects at the middle school, we've done projects at both of the elementary schools. And Jim Rizicki and Sue can't speak more highly of the work they've done for the district. So they have a proposal tonight to continue that partnership, and I'll turn it over to you guys.
That's perfect. I don't even have to say anything else. But, so yeah, we've been working with the district for a very long time, and there are plenty of Siemens controls throughout the school district, but there's plenty that are still kind of a bit of a hodgepodge. You know, whenever you add on, in addition to a school or a couple of classrooms like Mohammed, you added a couple of classrooms after it was built in 86, right? So every time you always add on here and there. And when you do that, a lot of times you get stuck with lowest bid, and lowest bid doesn't always mean the lowest qualified bid. So you get controls a lot of times, like you had at the middle school and some of the others that weren't even hooked up, we found when we got in there and started doing our analysis. Literally wires weren't even connected to the actuator. So as Jim said, it wasn't rocket science to figure out how to make this thing work right. But since that time, you've also hired Jim, and he's part of your team, which is probably one of the best teams in all of the K through 12 work that we do. And I've specifically been working with just K-12 for about 14 years with Siemens since day one. So I've seen a lot of school systems in Maine and New Hampshire, and you guys really have your act together as a district. You have a capital improvement plan in place, which you pick away at. Jim was just discussing some of the things you're doing this summer, things you've already done. So you're already light years ahead of a lot of your colleagues in the K-12 world in terms of taking care of your facilities, which ultimately is the classroom environment for the kids, right? So
So for clarification, when you say gym, you're talking Jim Rizicki?
both. Both gyms have been added since we started, so good point. From the last project until now, a lot of the projects we're doing with the K-12 world are performance-based contracts, and we've just finished up one with Hillsborough Deering. We're finished the analysis for Hopkinton, Barrington Schools, Concord Hospital, Wentworth Douglas Hospital, a lot of not just schools, but almost any big entity that's a big user of energy is going this way to get things done. And a big reason for that is it allows you to create a longer plan, take your 5-year plan and spread it out for another 10, 15, even 20 years. Help you create a bigger master plan of your facilities. And while you are doing a great job of picking away at some things, you're doing a couple boilers here and there and some air handlers this summer, it allows you to get more done in one shot. So you can pick away at that list and hopefully ultimately shrink that list, but then look at other things that they're going to need to be done, but because of the other big ticket items like boilers, heat in the school, that kind of trumps some of the other things like automated shades at Mohammed where the windows that are up high and you can't get to them. When you're trying to pick away at the other things, you can never find the funding to do some of those other things that would be really good to have. So that's what performance-based contracting does, is it allows us to go through all the facilities per square foot, do a really detailed analysis, which we haven't done yet. We had done one just for the high school, as Jim alluded to, Jim Morse. And it allows us to go further, look at every building, every square foot, even the middle school. I know that's not a favorite, but it also helps eliminate some of the things that maybe you were thinking about doing if it's not really good for the long term. But look at things that are maybe quick payback items that would make sense for the next 5 years. So you really look at all options, regardless of their outcome. And it doesn't mean you do all of them. It doesn't mean you do half of them. It wouldn't be uncommon for a lot of our K-12 customers to do multiple phases with these projects. But the nice thing is that you have your pricing, you have your paybacks, you have the engineering done, and you have a complete list of everything that is needed within the schools. And not just energy related, but everything. Exterior, windows, just infrastructure-based things, roofs, brick and mortar, expansions of the buildings, making sure the heating plants are viable for expansions. So it does tie into any long-term plan you're thinking about doing in terms of expansions. That would be part of the whole analysis that we would be doing as part of your ability to pick the projects that you want to do today, or maybe the things you want to wait a couple of years on. In a nutshell, that's essentially what happens, but it's the only legal means of lowest qualified bidding when it comes to picking out things for big projects. This is this way where you get competitive bids on everything. We engineer it. All the costs are held up front, so that you're not required to pay for engineering up front. So you're literally not spending any money outside of your budget for about 1.5 years, which is attractive to schools. It's all designed so that we're working within the confines of your existing budget. So whether it's an operational expense or an energy expense, those monies that are in your current budget are what are going to be worked backwards for on your project, so the payment. So you set it up with a lease purchase, which is what all schools essentially end up doing, outside of any bonds or incentives or anything that you can offset it with. But you're looking at that payment with Sue and your administrative team to say, okay, how much of this do you want to bite off now? Or how much can you bite off with what you have in your current budget? And you guys obviously have a good pulse on that. So that's how it would essentially work. The things that you do are the things that you know you can afford today without adding more money to your budget on an annual basis. So it really does, it helps you look for the future, but also work within the confines of your existing budget. So no one panics and looks at a $5 million project and says, how the heck are we going to pay for this? And it's not just a mill rate increase through taxpayers like a traditional bond. It's not a bond, it's a lease. So, and that's why 99% of these schools are going that direction, because the banks hold the responsibility of everything they're putting in, which is a pretty good scenario. And the other thing is that all the engineering, all the costs for it, designing boilers, designing exterior renditions of windows and things you may or may not do this phase, all that cost is rolled into your financing so that you don't have to come up with $100,000 to engineer a project that you may or may not do. It's all held back. So it's designed that by the time you select your project and everything's engineered, you guys have voted on it a few times of what you would want this to look like. Your first payment is based upon completion of the project, and that's what the banks roll in for you. They give you a year for construction. That's why I say it's about a year and a half. Say 6 months to do your analysis, picked out the things that are most amenable and feasible, and then a year to do the construction of it, and that's when you start making your payments. So you're not really having to spend anything for quite a while, and you can kind of take your time and pick the things that make sense for the district for the long term.
So Sue, could you go to the podium just to get some questions? So tonight, Sue, what you're asking for the board to authorize us to allow Siemens to do the audit?
The analysis, correct. That's what we would need before we move forward. And then we'd go out to bid, correct, after that, after the analysis?
Yeah, we would, working with Jim, we would be getting competitive bids on everything on the project. So essentially, we're going to design.
You have to talk into the mic so that our audience can.
Essentially, yeah, during the analysis, it's not a typical analysis that you just look at everything. It's not like an architectural and engineering study. We're looking at things that have life expectancy, you know. There's no sense to spend thousands of dollars looking at things that any of the schools, middle school, any school, that will never happen, right? It's the point of it is to look at things that make sense for the long term and right now, and that things that you can actually get into the budget or pay for. So, yeah, we'll be getting competitive numbers for everything, lighting, controls, everything.
So I just have a question. So we authorize this analysis, and I assume that is it $25,000 that we're authorizing for the analysis? How much, what is that?
Actually, the analysis, there is no cost, it's rolled into the project, but if for some reason we decide not to go forward with it, we would have to pay for that analysis.
Which would be what?
The 25, correct.
Yeah, and we only use $25,000. It would cost us probably 4 times that amount to do the actual analysis, but if you put that in there because of the inherent nature of Vista Schools, if you put in $100,000, you know, that's not the point of this whole methodology. The point of it is to hold the cost, we've never done an analysis and had someone pay the analysis ever. And I don't know how many thousands of projects we've done with schools, but we've literally never done that. We put that number in there just so that we know the district is planning on doing something at some point.
Okay. Kenny, go ahead.
How does this tie into the work that you did with our district several years ago? Because I know that certainly the high school is a big focus of your emphasis, and we've certainly had a lot of returns from that. But I know that you did spend quite a bit of time at our 3 other schools. And so where are we going that we didn't go, what was that, 3, 4, 5 years ago?
Yeah, and most of that analysis was done at the high school because of it was a reaction to a report that came out about the cost per square foot of the high school and how high it was. And a lot of that, as Jim Morissette alluded to, was because of the things were running 24/7. So really a big part of this project the first time was recommissioning of the high school to be reflective of what it's used for today and not its original design in 2005. It really hadn't been commissioned ever. So from there, we went and looked at some of the other schools, identified some things, and you have been picking away at a lot of those. We had done a boiler at one of the schools, but really hadn't gone too crazy on the other buildings, especially the elementary schools. We didn't go too far with those in terms of the report. This would be a lot more in-depth analysis. That was it was a great project and saved a ton of money, but didn't really allow for multiple months of analysis with an entire team. But it would tie in nicely to all those things.
And I recognize the incredible value that we've obtained as a district with the work that you've done here. I know that one of the big concerns at Moheramet Elementary School was it was hot and it was cold, and it was hot and cold in different areas on the same day. My understanding is that problem continues to exist unchanged. Is that because you think you didn't get in there with the depth that you needed, and that this might be a way to correct that? Or are there things that we as a district already have been identified and we have not put into action?
That's a perfect example of why we're here talking about this. It's because you got, like I said, you guys are doing a great job of picking away at a lot of these things, and you continue to do so, but it becomes really difficult financially to do all of the things and get your arms wrapped around the heating and the cooling in that building, because there's just not enough funds to pick away at things like that. It's more or less, if you continue to do that, those problems will go unsolved because you just can't find enough funding to do everything. So when you do it under this methodology, this financing tool, it does allow you to go back and really look at those things and solve those problems in that building.
So can you invite
Yeah.
Jim to the podium?
Jim?
Just in terms, for context for Brian, because, and Michael, who are coming, well, Michael is aware of it, I'm pretty sure, from being a citizen actively involved. The situation in the district 5 years ago was, 6 years ago, there was a report written, and basically there were $4.5 million worth of identified unmet capital needs in the district. And so that started the process of building a capital plan when Sue and I got together. And over the last 5 budgets, we've reduced that to about $2.5 million. So what this proposal would do would give us a way of looking at the remainder of those projects, plus any new projects that have evolved since that analysis. And then from the analysis they're proposing, we as a district would determine what steps we wanted to take, how much money we wanted to spend. And I think the key to this whole proposal is the way that we've been doing it to date is we've added more money into the capital account. What this proposal does is it uses the money we have in our capital account already to leverage the lease. So it does go right along the lines you were saying, Kenny. There's lots of pieces to a heating system, and Jim and Sue and I have annual meetings on how we're going to do this and how we're going to do that, and Jim's been great. But this gives us an opportunity to look at these things comprehensively and to figure out a financing mechanism that other school systems have used. I talked to Gail in Barrington as the superintendent, and she couldn't speak more highly of this process. They got a lot of work done that they would never have gotten done. And so that's kind of the context of this. We're always trying to chip away at this huge unmet need, and we have been doing that successfully. This would give us the possibility of wiping out that need completely, potentially.
Al and then Denise. Okay.
My question is, if we approved the, comprehensive analysis, when would you have it done? I mean, because we're headed into, in October, November, our budget season, so would we see results so that we could do it in whatever that is, the fiscal 18-19 budget?
Yeah, our goal would be within 90 days have a pretty good analysis done of what your project would look like. So really the way we do it, the methodology we use is we don't spend all the money to engineer everything all the way through for things that will never have life, because you're wasting your money at the end of the day, because it is going to be financed. So we'll identify things that we know that we've installed a million times and we have a pretty good idea on pricing, put it into a cash flow analysis and figure out what you can afford based on current budget and when could that be done. So you look at it from a priority standpoint. And then the things that can't be done, maybe it's a second phase. But right, I mean, because you already have a great CIP going and you've already identified a lot of these things and we know the district, it would be exponentially faster than a typical audit. So I think within 90 days we could have a pretty good idea of what your project would look like and what you would know the cost would be and what your contribution would be on an annual basis.
I was just going to say, my comment is the district has moved to leasing in just about everything now. We've done it with computers. Didn't we do it with the bus?
Yep.
So it's just a common mechanism that we're using, and the other advantage I think Siemens has is that we've been here for 5 years and been working on our systems.
Denise?
So you're going to identify various needs, and then are you going to tell us in terms of what you consider to be the priorities, or is that the kind of thing where you're going to say, well, you could do this, 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 and this, and then we as a district, just are you going to be making recommendations in terms of the priorities? That's my question.
Yeah, but you also have an advanced facility director too. Jim is, I don't want want to say too much, but, make his head start go like this, He's extremely advanced in that role. So you have someone that has a pretty good idea and pulse on what's going on. Our job would not to be, you tell us what you want to do, administration, but here are the things that we've identified that you both have made concerns about, or you've told us that these would be the things that we'd love to get done first. But we want to find other things that maybe you haven't thought of, and maybe bring in some other ideas. Maybe talk about some renewable energies we've discussed. Maybe give you a whole list of things that were never on any CIP. That would be our goal. Doesn't mean you have to do them all or any of them, but at least then you've identified things outside of just your typical infrastructure needs that you have, or deferred maintenance needs. And also roll in some STEM aspect of it. STEM has become, we've created an entire STEM team as part of this analysis, and bringing that into the curriculum that we talked to Jim about. That's been a big, big, big thing for us, is making the kids in the district part of the analysis, if possible. I know in the summertime it gets a little tough, but that's been a really big thing too, and schools can take advantage of as much of that as humanly possible.
Mike, why don't you go?
You haven't spoken yet, so if you want to.
So you said the initial analysis would take about 90 days. Can you give us a sense of how big that team is, what the background of the folks on that make up that team, and how much of that time is actually spent in the buildings here versus doing the background project planning?
Yeah, that's a good question. We'll have a lead mechanical engineer, a backup mechanical engineer, probably 3 energy engineers with a lead energy engineer walking the buildings at different times. They also walk in subcontractors because everyone has their expertise. So we'll have a building envelope contractor that we've had a lot of success with. They do a ton of projects, so we get really good pricing on their expertise. Same with lighting. We actually, EMC is the company that we partner with a lot. We brought them to you guys like 6 years ago, and Jim's been doing a lot of great work with them and Sue since 6 years ago. So we'll have them help. They've done a lot of that analysis already, right? Yeah, so they're experts on LED lighting. They're experts on the incentives. So we're experts on controls and mechanical, but we'll have a team that's basically experts on everything. Refrigeration for walk-in coolers. We have a company, NRM, that's really good at it. Doesn't mean they're going to do the work, but they're the experts in that. So we'll bring in an entire team of probably 15 or 20 different people throughout the next 90 days to help.
And how much of that time is on site?
Oh, I would say probably over half of the time would be on site, and then the other half, to your point, building models, the spreadsheets, the calculations, because ultimately we're going to create a financial tool that shows all of the things that we've identified, individually priced with savings, incentives, and then it's tied into a cash flow model that Sue would have the most expertise on your side of, okay, click in all these things that we'd love to do, and that equals whatever cost. Okay, that means I have to move. Okay, we could do that, but what if we take out that boiler because we're not sure about that building? Okay, that lowers the cost, and now that lowers. So it's a big dynamic spreadsheet that's all tied together that allows you to pick and choose based on your economic feasibility at the time. So it's a pretty awesome process.
Kenny?
Just picking up on the comments you made about kind of focusing, paying attention on things, not that have this incredibly short shelf life, but things that are around that we could improve. In our district, there's been advanced planning about replacing our middle school. Mm-hmm. And I think if we're able to study it correctly, come up with the right project, we would go to the voters and hopefully build a new middle school. So to me, in a way, at this point, our middle school might be that car that's really old. We've put a lot of dollars into it, but maybe we don't want to keep putting those dollars into it because maybe we're going to trade it in or do whatever. Does your price change if we take the middle school out of the focus of your attention, given that reality that I think our hope is that our middle school will be history soon?
Not really, because we're not going to be spending a lot of time. We know that. We're cognizant of that building. And like I said, only thing we'd be looking at there, and we've already walked through the building, we know the things that are quick paybacks. So we're not going to spend really any of your money for us to engineer something, like I said, that has no life. So we're not going to engineer a new wing of the building or new ceilings or boilers or lights, because hopefully that won't be necessary, right?
So that's factored
Yeah,
into your
yeah, absolutely.
assessment?
Yep,
Okay.
yep.
I didn't
But
know you were copies.
how many thousands of boilers we've installed and lights we've installed, we could get you pretty good budget numbers on that building, just to let you know, here's further justification of why you probably shouldn't spend the money on that. It wouldn't be the first time that we've identified $1 million worth of work for a school system that really, we said we wouldn't spend this money. Structurally, the building is not something we would invest $500,000 in LED lights into. It makes no sense. You'd be better off spending that money somewhere else. So our goal is to be a partner and not try to sell you things you don't need. I think that's why schools like this process the most.
So I guess while I hope that that's the case and we're ready to replace the middle school in a couple of years, we might not be. I mean, in the best case, we're still a few years out. Some of these things are going to have less than, like you said, a fairly short payback period. And who knows what happens when we actually go to the voters for that project. So I think it would be worthwhile to have as much information as possible about the middle school, even hoping that we don't have to do most of it.
Yeah, and it's a fluid process. So if in fact we're in there and you say, really, we probably should get give us some budgets on updating all the ventilation systems in there because I need it, that's not a problem. At least then you know what the costs are that we've identified through this process for that school in the event that it doesn't get voted forward. At least then you'll know, okay, well, here we are, back to letter A again.
Right. Give us the first pass so we know where we should be looking if we go that way.
Yep, definitely.
I had a question, and I may just be slow on this, how this is going to impact future facilities budgets. Like you come in with this audit, and as long as we go ahead with the project, then that cost of the audit is rolled into, I guess, future revenue that's going to come back to Siemens. Is this a kind of thing where you'll look at our future budget, you'll say, okay, this is kind of what we have to work with, this is the most efficient way to spend that money, or if you want to go a little higher, this would be the more efficient, are you going to give us kind of scenarios like that?
Absolutely.
So that it doesn't necessarily mean that we're going to have a dramatic increase in our facilities budget in a future year. Am I right on that?
Absolutely. The goal is to help eliminate having to keep expanding it by getting a lot of it done in one project. So it gives you, and especially Jim, a better chance to get his arms wrapped around a lot of the things you just can't get to. It doesn't mean you do it all now, but it gives you a plan. And it, like you said, this tool will allow you to pick and choose the project that you want to do now and also let you know what's down the road. So it's completely fluid. You can do as little or as much with this process as you want financially. And yeah.
And just a question for maybe Jim, both Jims actually. So if we're thinking about having a 5-year strategic plan, it would seem to me this would help you imagine what that 5-year plan is like. Am I correct on that?
Absolutely.
Yeah, you not only keep me busy, like all those projects in 1 or 2 summers, which is not bad, you get a lot done, but it would also open up for things that are way outside of the scope of this type of method, like parking lot improvements or expansions or athletic facilities, things of that. I think it will allow us to be a little bit more open-minded to other things, because we may have projects that we're not ready to get done like right now because they're emergencies.
So I think not only does it inform the next strategic plan process, I just want to wrap around where Michael was. I also think it plays very much into the documentation and data we need to share with the community. So I don't think the middle school should get a brush over. I would consider the middle school, quite frankly, equal to the other 3 buildings, only because the data that you pull out of that will prove invaluable as we document the need for that building to be replaced. That's how I would see it. I think your expertise and your engineer's expertise is something that we don't have at our fingertips. And, people will constantly be asking us, why don't we renovate one more time? I think you have the ability to provide us with the documentation as to why renovation is cost prohibitive when compared to a new building.
2 more quick questions.
Sure.
Will the administrative buildings on Co Drive be included in the audit?
I specifically requested that the SAU building Heating plant looked at.
No.
And is there a minimum project spend as part of the contract to avoid paying for the audit directly?
There's no, in terms of the law for performance contract, there's no minimum dollar spend or for us as an organization. No, absolutely not.
So the question is whether we're ready to authorize this audit. Okay, motion?
I move to authorize the comprehensive performance audit of the school facility buildings.
Moved by Michael, is there a second? Second by Dan. Further questions? Here you go. Okay. All those in favor, please raise your hand. 7 in favor, the student rep in favor. Okay, that audit is authorized.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay, we move to the assistant superintendent's the math report.
Thank you. As Todd Allen, Assistant Superintendent, as you all probably already know, we have been focusing on mathematics in the district for multiple years now. We had a K-5 math committee working for the last 3 years. They continue to meet regularly. They've really worked to conduct vertical meetings, to conduct grade level meetings, and really worked to implement Eureka as a math program. And the success of that work has been tremendous. I think the coherence in our curriculum and the focus that our teachers now have on math, it's really done a great job of raising the bar. This year, our strategic goal really related to turning that to our 6 to 12 math program. And so we've spent the year really looking at our 6 to 12 math program. And right now, I'd like to introduce 6 of my closest math friends that I've invited to come and join me for this presentation. So, Julia Wadelski from the middle school, Ruth Galing from the middle school, Chris Kearney from the high school, Peter Harward from the high school, Lisa Hallback from the high school, and Aaron Ward is hiding somewhere. Oh, there he is. Aaron Ward from the middle school. In addition to we have had a committee of all 16 math educators and myself and building administrators meeting regularly throughout the year. So these 6 people have very kindly agreed to come in here to kind of help me share what the committee's been working on, but I just wanted you to know this has been a really comprehensive effort. Every single teacher who works 6 to 12 math has had their hand on this work throughout the course of this year. So what was our focus for this year? Basically, our focus was really to review the 6 to 12 program by having vertical meetings with the idea of really looking at the scope and sequence of math so that we can look at how we can support all of our kids. I don't think it's a surprise to anybody if I say math is really a hot button issue in this community. People are very much want a high quality math program, and I think the level of passion and commitment we've had this year with all of our math educators shows that that is absolutely where they are as well. So what have we done this year, just as kind of a general overview? We have had middle and high school meetings virtually monthly starting in November all year long. We've spent and that's the whole group, and then we've had multiple subcommittee meetings for various purposes throughout the course of the year. We have worked in utilizing the NCTM recommendations and the Common Core College and Career Readiness Standards to develop a mission and vision statement for our program, which we're going to talk about tonight. One of the things that we definitely want to be able to do with our community is to be able to really articulate what we're trying to accomplish with our math program. One of the things that's really impressed me at the K-5 level as I've watched the teachers go through this kind of meeting process is when you talk with a second grade teacher, they're as familiar with what a fourth grader needs to know as they are with their own kids, and that really is how you develop that cohesion in your program. And so really, we really wanted to create that common mission and vision. We've also done a complete review of our curriculum sequence. You may recall Mahesh Sharma worked with our district for a couple of years, ending last year. One of the last things I asked him to do was to give us a recommendation for what he felt would be the best sort of math pathways moving forward, and we've worked with those recommendations to incorporate those into the work that we've done, and we're going to talk about that in a minute. Additionally, we have, as you know, because you've heard multiple presentations from the middle school, but it's also going on at the high school, a lot of work around competencies and looking at competencies in math in particular, and we've been doing a tremendous focus on that. And then lastly, we have really looked at resources in the district and getting ourselves on a consistent resource allocation cycle so we have the right resources in the hands of our teachers who then can use them to make sure we have the best possible math experience for our kids.
Todd, what resources are we talking about specifically there?
We have purchased, actually we're going to get into that in a few minutes, we have purchased McGraw-Hill Math Series for grades for 9 and 11, our algebra programs, and we've just made the determination that that's what we're going to do for grades 6 through 8 at the middle school. It's a strong Common Core based math program that leads very nicely into algebra, which is kind of the bridge subject that kind of goes from 8th to 9th grade. But we'll talk about that a little bit more in a minute. So I'd like to invite Aaron Ward to come on down. He's going to talk about where we're at.
Good to see everyone again. So I'm not going to read right from the slide. My part's pretty brief here, but really just highlighting that this year our 8th grade students, the class of 2021, we have over 112 students, about 40 more than we had in the, or have in the current graduating class, and that just speaks a lot to the fact that we're getting our students ready earlier for algebra, and I think the results show up in our standardized test scores as long as they're with their success in the classroom. Along those same lines, there's about twice as many high school students in AP math classes, about 70 to 35 there were a few years ago. This 2016 math SAT scores were the highest in district history, which our high school folks can be very proud of, and they're second in the state of New Hampshire, and we're certainly shooting for the top spot because I think we all agree second place is close but not quite where we want to be. Across all the grade levels compared to the rest of the state, we did outperform by 24%. And just the breakdown of those numbers on the next slide. Thank you much. We outperformed anywhere from 20 to 31% across the different grades, and under the all levels you can see the 24% I mentioned, the 73% at Oyster River, scoring in the proficient range or above proficient compared to about half the students at typical schools amongst the state. So looking at it that way, we're certainly ahead of the curve. We know we've got work to do to move up to that #1 spot, but the trends that we're seeing with more students taking higher level math at earlier junctures in their schooling is showing some strong results. Yes.
I just have a question as far as with the increased number of students taking algebra, in terms of their success rate. Like,
yeah, we have Julia Wadowski's here, our 8th grade algebra and Common Core 8th grade teacher, so she can definitely answer that, or at the end we can kind of as a group answer that, but that's a great question.
Okay.
Now Chris Kearney.
So in front of you now is our mission statement. We've spent the better part of this year meeting as a whole, the high school and the middle school, to come up with a common mission statement. We looked at other mission statements from other schools. We also brainstormed what we wanted on it, and this is what we came up with. The most important thing is we wanted to engage students, support and challenge them in the classroom. The ultimate goal was to get them college and career ready. So that's what we got.
And I'm going to just touch on the vision statement. Clearly, you can read it, so I'm not going to get into everything specific about it, but I do want to really focus. We spent a lot of time talking about the kind of classroom culture and math environment that we wanted to create. And so as we created this vision statement, it really was about trying to make sure that we as a group really believed in a very supportive, nurturing, and challenging, appropriately challenging math environment, so all of our kids would be exposed to the right kind of math instruction at the right time so that they can be successful. One of the things that I think we identified early on as a struggle is, and as I said, math is a hot button issue. I think people look at it and rightfully so, because it's a very important subject, can be very critical of what we're doing. And what we wanted to do is to make sure, as we talked about our math program moving forward, that all of us were talking from the same language. So when we talked about high expectations, we were on the same page. So really, this is what that's about. And it isn't something that this vision statement, we adopt it and we're done. Clearly, we have a lot of work to do to make sure we continue with that consistency. So we were very pleased with this. And now I'm going to ask some middle school teachers to come on down.
All right, so when we're talking 6 through 12, our goal, as Todd had mentioned a couple times, is to be kind of one unit, but obviously there are some clear differences. In the middle school, we have some challenges as far as students can't really select classes, at least at the 6th and 7th grade level. So one of the biggest challenges is trying to find a way to challenge those kids that really do well, and then support the kids that are maybe struggling a little bit for grade level. So I'm thrilled with the new middle school schedule. It's still in its draft form, I think, but we have a pretty good look at what it looks like. And as I had mentioned at some of our competency school board talks, and my hope for the RTI program, it's now being called Bobcat Time. Mr. Richard and Mr. Sullivan did a great job getting us daily RTI. So we are more confident than ever that both enrichment and relearning, reteaching can happen in the way that we had kind of envisioned it. That relearning enrichment also happens within our classrooms every day. I think as a middle school unit, the 8 of us, or 10 of us, counting the 5th grade, are really looking at how to work challenges into our classrooms and providing different opportunities for different students. So that's really one of the main focuses of our group and things we talk about quite frequently. And then your question about algebra and pre-algebra coming up.
Of course, algebra in the 8th grade and the 8th grade level is the first time kids get a chance to have different level courses in math. We've really done a lot of work with the high school teachers in really making this Algebra 1 a strong, it's a full high school course. We worked on competencies with the high school teachers over the summer. We have the same textbook as the high school. We've met frequently over the course of the year to make sure we're on the same page and covering the same topics to the same level. So it is a really strong high school course that's being taught at the 8th grade level. Not to diminish the pre-algebra course as well. We do the 8th grade Common Core for pre-algebra, and it's a very algebra-rich course. Really seeing the kids, it's almost like we cover kind of the first half of Algebra 1 up to quadratics. My pre-algebra kids always, just recently, we covered Pythagorean theorem before the algebra kids did. And I'm like, yeah, you guys did, because they cover a lot of the same things. A lot of it is a different pace, a different timing. So we almost give the kids a preview of the first half of Algebra 1 in 8th grade Common Core. So it is very algebra rich and builds for those kids that are maybe not quite ready for a full Algebra 1 course and the pace of that, a really strong foundation when they go up to the high school. So I think both courses are really good courses, and it gives kids a really strong foundation for the high school. So they're both very algebra rich. I think with Common Core, some of the stuff that used to be out in the high school level is now down at even the 8th grade Common Core level. So it is a strong algebra rich course. It's just who's ready for it at what time. And I think we're really coming to a point where we can kind of figure out who's ready for it. Kids are having some success at it. There's still some kids that may need to take Algebra 1 over again. Most are moving on to either geometry or accelerated geometry. But we're really kind of getting that down. But it is very algebra rich at that point.
Okay, so mine is a long line there, so I'm not going to read all of it. But the big idea is that in the schedule, there's built-in time, every day for any child that wants or needs math support or enrichment to get it from a math teacher. It would either be their math teacher, or me, the RTI person, or now with the new schedule, the other like 7th grade teacher will be helping 7th graders with math, and it's in a small group. It's not a big class. The kids can ask any question they want. One kind of neat thing that we're doing is for kids that are in 7th grade that want to take algebra, we provide a lot of extra instruction that they can work on to prepare themselves for algebra. So we have an IXL program that the school has bought that lets kids practice all the skills they need for success in algebra. So it's really available for anyone. The kids that need it get extra help. Kids that want enrichment can also get help at that time.
And Ruth, I don't mean to interrupt, but I do want to emphasize the point you just made. In the upcoming school year, in both middle school and high school, for the first time, math teachers will be available all day long to help students in math who want the extra help or who want to accelerate or who want to reinforce their skill. Suzanne has scheduled a math teacher in the Learning Lab, and the middle school has set their schedule up, so math teachers will be able to help math teachers all day long. So it's a major and fantastic improvement for our students.
And it's great that it's available every day, so a kid never has to leave school confused and feel behind and stressed out the next day. We'll be right there. You have a problem, you don't understand what happened in class today? All right, let's talk about it right now. So I think that will make a big difference for the students.
When you want to just mention the McGraw-Hill textbook? You want to talk about that? You want me to?
Let's see. We were looking at McGraw-Hill, and it was kind of, the middle school has kind of got one foot in the elementary school and one foot in the high school. It's a very much a transition. 5th and 6th grade are kind of making that transition from elementary, 7th and 8th grade kind of making that transition into high school. Because we looked at a lot of different textbooks, but we really felt that the McGraw-Hill would make that transition the best from elementary to high school, and that difference between the two, and make that bridge. We are still doing a lot of pulling resources, like for example, a lot of the Eureka materials are free. We've been still pulling in some of that to make that bridge and bringing in some of those resources, and then making that transition up to the high school with the McGraw-Hill.
Thank you. So we looked at the different pathways because there are, I feel like I'm echoing. Am I too close?
No, you're fine.
Okay. So we looked at a variety of different pathways that students can go through the math program, starting in 6th grade and through high school. When we first started looking at the pathways, it was dozens. So as a way to try to condense it, we've come up with this flow chart. So 6th, 7th grade, again, they don't really have much choice at the middle school. They take 6th grade math, 7th grade math, and then in 8th grade, that's where you start seeing they might be taking Algebra 1, or they might be taking Common Core Math, grade 8. From Algebra 1, if you looked at the left-hand side of the slide, they could go into either accelerated geometry or geometry in grade 9. And from there, they could go into either Algebra 2 Trig or Algebra 2. Often students who go into accelerated geometry go into A2 Trig, but they could also just go into Algebra 2, and likewise, students who took geometry in grade 9 might go into A2 Trig, but often go into Algebra 2. So there's some crisscrossing. It's not necessarily this straight down flow chart. After Algebra 2, there's a variety of different math electives that students could take. They could take Trig Finite, which kind of paves the way for pre-calculus. There are higher level math courses, AP Calculus, AP Stats. There's a computer integrated math course, which kind of explores mathematics through the lens of AutoCAD and other computer programs. And there's also the Topics in Applied College Math course, which is great for students who are going into more of the liberal arts when they're in college. So that was Algebra 1 in 8th grade. If they took Common Core Math in 8th grade, again, grade 9, they could go into Algebra 1, Intro into Geometry, Algebra 1, they then have that same setup. Yes, sir.
just a critique of your flow chart. It's incomplete. So you need to define the math electives from 11th and 12th and what the fourth year experience is. Because as a parent, when I look at that, I've stopped at 10th grade. I can't define, while you say the pathways exist, I can't identify what the pathways are. So your flow chart needs to show that. So for example, if I take geometry in the 9th grade year and I take algebra 2 in the 10th grade year, how does that relate to me getting to more advanced mathematics? Okay. So you can't follow it on your flow chart.
Yeah, and actually the flow chart, we've put it as a slide, as a standalone. It was intended to be with the narrative that's in the backup that you have that gives a description of what that fourth year option is. What we were trying to communicate with this slide is that we're trying to establish a flexible pathways for kids. And you're absolutely right, more definition is helpful. But what we wanted to get across was the notion, particularly for those kids, there's always been this idea that if you don't get into algebra in 8th grade, that solidifies where your math pathway is going to go. And what we're trying to show is there's any number of routes that you can get there. And we have kids that make different choices along the way and still are able to get to the highest end of the sequence. So you make a good point.
It needs to go like that.
As a standalone.
I mean, where the anxiety increases is at 7th grade. Because at 7th grade, parents begin to look at, okay, they're mapping the 5 years
yes.
out. They're saying, okay, my student needs to get in, or my kid needs to get into Algebra 1, where do they go? There's this anxiety that if I don't get into Algebra 1, or actually the next place you hit the big anxiety point is in 10th grade, which is Algebra 2 trigonometry versus Algebra 2. So if you don't show the flow chart, and ideally what it should come is at the very least the 7th grade level to parents, so that people can begin to prepare and think their way through. And that's been a common...
I'm sorry, if I could just interrupt. I mean, the intent of this is, and actually the reason why I put it together was we want to be talking about this in 6th grade. So if you can imagine your 6th grade teacher at open house sharing with parents, here are the pathways that we're working on, these are the options for your child, because we know that if we wait until 8th grade to start talking about it, for some kids we've closed off some options. So we want to make that be a conversation early on, and we want all of our math teachers to be able to talk about it. So it's not just the 8th grade teachers that start talking about what the options are in high school. It's 6th grade teachers who can start talking about it. Because actually, believe it or not, we have multiple middle school 6th graders who have moved up, and we've had kids taking high school courses as well. So you're absolutely right, Al. We need to start talking about this very early, and we need to articulate. And your comment about making sure we specify what the fourth year experiences are. Absolutely.
That is in 5 years on the school board. That's one of the main concerns that comes through, is the inability to communicate what those pathways are, and it causes a tremendous amount of anxiety to parents, which are then passed along to students. So it needs to be clarified, not just amongst the math teachers, but that has to be spread to the community so there's a clear understanding of how the math program works. Absolutely.
Hi, Peter Harwood at the high school. I wanted to give you a little more information on the fourth year math experience. So I know we just kind of left it on there as, hey, there's such a thing as a fourth year experience. What we were trying to convey was there's 3 years where you would take a core class essentially from the math department. Those that are advanced would most likely stay in for the fourth year and go on to something like AP Stats or AP Calc or that sort of class. The fourth year math experience is a requirement that a student takes 4 full years of what counts as a math class. And examples at the school, we have a lot of classes outside of the math department that will count as, that are approved for this fourth year math experience. So those classes range from, there's the business and computer education department, and things like intro to programming, advanced programming, marketing, personal finance, all of that would count as a fourth year math credit. Science department, you have chemistry, physics, AP versions of both. And also if you get into the technology department, their woodworking classes, their construction, and their electricity. examples like that would all count for the fourth-year math experience. So some students that take a less math-intensive route could take a class like that the fourth year. The other thing I wanted to touch upon was the supplemental algebra supports. I think we've established how important it is for the kids to have a strong algebra base in order to succeed in the other classes. And one of the things we're working on is a summer program where students that passed algebra, the second piece of the algebra class, they pass it, but they might not necessarily pass it with a great understanding. We're inviting those kids to come during the summer school hours to work with a math teacher and enrich their algebra base so that they'd have a better foundation for the future. Because we've seen in the past that's really the underlying factor here in going on to the other classes.
Getting back to the fourth year math experience, but it doesn't necessarily have to be a senior year. I mean, like if they were to take one of these math intensive classes,
It has to cover 4 years, so they couldn't, my understanding is they can't take it, they can't double up junior year and have 4 years. It's not four classes, it's 4 years.
So,
Yeah, you have to have a math experience all 4 years of your high school experience. Yep.
So you could have more than 4. You could have, 6, 7 classes if you took, I have students that take AP Stats and AP Calc the same year that would just count as 1 year experience, but they still get 2 classes.
but you still would have to have one your senior year, even if you took AP Calc or whatever.
Correct.
You'd still
But
have to.
there's 2 different ways school districts can choose to meet that requirement. One is to be very strict about it and say it must be a math department class. The other way, which is also allowable, is to look at all of your courses and look at those that are math enriched or math heavy. So for example, that's what Peter was talking about, like physics, building trades, those kind of classes where kids would be doing a lot of mathematics as part of their class, but that could count as their fourth year math experience. So you don't necessarily have to take a course in the math department all 4 years, but you have to have a course that involves math all 4 years.
Just to speak on that very briefly, that's new. The state of New Hampshire passed the fourth year math experience. So the kids may take 4 years of math. If they take a math class within the math department, then that definitely applies for the fourth year math experience. But for some kids, they may choose to take up to Algebra 2, and they may not want to take a math class past Algebra 2. They may choose not to work within the math department. The state has said they still need to continue to use their mathematics skills and to grow within mathematics. And so that's why they have the opportunity to take these other classes and still utilize those mathematics skills in a different way. So that's that fourth year math experience.
Right. But just one more point, but it takes a certain amount of planning, because if a student takes, they can take everything early, and then they're still, and when they get to their senior year, they still have to find something that, like if they've already done chemistry, they've already done physics, or, you know what I mean? Like they'd still have to find something that senior year.
Yes, they need to be, and that's one of the other advantages too, when we did our comprehensive counseling department overhaul a few years back, where we started in the summer after 8th grade, meeting with families, talking about what are the choices you're going to make, and certainly that's going to be part of the conversations that a lot of families will have. Yep.
Thank you.
So next we're going to talk about some supports we offer at the high school, one of which is Math Lab. So I don't know how much you guys are familiar with Math Lab, but it's been around for I think 3 or 4 years. It's just like a space for the kids to come to with a math teacher there that can help them with anything they need. They could also be assigned there from guidance or their math teacher. It's also available for drop-in, so maybe there's a big test coming up. The kids just haven't been able to get to their teacher for help. They can go to the Math Lab where there's a teacher sitting there just waiting for them to come, and they can answer any question that they have. Kids stop in, kids get assigned, and it's continuing next year, so it's a great resource that we have right now.
Yep. And the other support that's in place is office hours. Office hours apply to any department, not just math. There's 2 days a week, Thursday and Friday, where we have 20 minutes in non-block weeks for office hours and 30 minutes in the block weeks. And students can choose to go visit any teacher of choice. So if I had assigned some math homework that they were struggling with, or had a test or quiz coming up and wanted to see me for extra help or any of the other math teachers, that's been really beneficial for the students, at least to speak for the math department. We see a lot of people in office hours. And then those that need more time or would like more time, we also obviously help after school as well.
So to just kind of summarize, I mean, our goal this year was to get our middle school and high school teachers working together, really, not that they haven't been working together prior, but really give them a focused opportunity to do so, and really try to coordinate that 6 to 12 experience. And I really think we've been successful in starting to pinpoint the ideas. One of the biggest things we wanted to get out of this was the ability of all of our math teachers to be able to talk very articulately about the experience of math throughout the district, and I think we're getting there. One of the things we are trying to do, and it kind of goes back to the question that Al had, was we're working, the document that I included as backup is just a general description. That's a sort of a working document that we're going to create a brochure that is something that will be handed out at open house. Teachers will talk from and be able to answer questions about the math program. Really, our goal is, in the end, we want all kids, all families to know that we want them to be successful in math, and we're ready and willing to do anything we can to help them get there. So, be happy to take any questions you might have.
I had a question. Do you have any like student tutors?
Yes, actually, at the high school level, National Honor Society students are assigned to the Learning Lab on a regular basis to provide tutoring. So yeah, there's a lot of that. Yep.
Good. Dan?
Also, I have a girl in the middle school that has been volunteering to tutor, and it's been really successful. So I'm hoping to do that more next year with some of the stronger students.
I think it's a great experience for the tutor as well.
Oh yeah, both of them were glowing. So.
And along with math tutors in the Learning Lab, you can also schedule with an NHS tutor, like during your study hall or during any period of the day that you might have free to get help.
Absolutely. And actually, while we're talking about tutors, up until this year, Ruth Galing has been serving as a math tutor, and we've converted her position to a professional position, but the reason we've done that is to have more math teachers available, and the way we're structuring it is there will be an awful lot of expert available tutoring from our math teachers at the middle school. Other questions?
Dan?
Thanks. Are we looking at the math? I'm interested in the math lab. It's an interesting sort of look into the experience of the students, perhaps. And I guess my question is: Are we tracking the experience of or the utilization of the math lab? In other words, are we aware of peaks and valleys in terms of how often kids are coming in? What are they coming in for help with? Are there times when kids are coming in and the teacher has a line?
Right. Well, because of the nature of the way math lab is assigned, or not assigned in some cases, there are times when definitely multiple students are assigned there, but then there are also times that, as was mentioned, where kids might be popping in because there's a big exam coming up, so the numbers can be higher. Our counseling department is very aware and tracking the numbers of kids who are assigned there for extra support. The drop-in component has not been tracked probably as closely as the assigned numbers, but we do know that when we created Math Lab, the assumption was that it would be mostly geared towards kids that were struggling in math, but actually what we found is that's not been the case. We actually have a lot more of the higher end students, the kids that are in trig and pre-calc and looking for that kind of support too. So it's actually provided for a demographic that we didn't originally intend it for, but it actually has been a really good service.
Kenny?
Several things. One, of course, thank you for doing this in-depth look at the math program. To follow up on Dan's question and maybe Superintendent Morse's point, it was my understanding that the math lab, as it had been running, was not open all periods, and that some of the periods when it was open, it was staffed by someone who did not have the subject knowledge to address the specific needs of that student. And it sounded like, from what Dr. Moore said, that's no longer going to be the problem?
Exactly. The initial reason we created Math Lab was to have a math person available, and the previous school year the schedule was put together and transitioned between Todd and Suzanne, and that part of the focus was lost. Suzanne has brought it back, and we'll have a math teacher in the math lab next year, just as we'll have math teachers available in the middle school. So it's going to be a 6 through 12 effort that we're pretty excited about. So I think it's going to work really, really well next year.
And I think that's wonderful to do. To the point about kids, I guess it's 8th grade, taking Algebra 1, getting launched to high school, and as we've talked at the board before, with math, is a subject that you need that foundation, and if that foundation is weak, as you start to get to more complex areas, that foundation doesn't support you. So I'm glad to hear about that summer offering. The word I think I heard used was that, it's available. Perhaps it might be something even stronger, that when you identify these kids that are on that cusp, to really explain and make a strong recommendation and point out the perils of advancing without gearing that up. So that's...
Yeah, you make a good point. There is a fine line between mandated summer school and providing support and encouragement. I think the group that was being mentioned was not necessarily students that are failing, but students that are we're concerned about their success. So we're trying to approach it in a more supportive manner, but you're absolutely right, working with families to help them understand what would be beneficial. The other thing I think it's important, this is the move towards competencies will also allow us and cause us to focus more in an ongoing fashion in providing that kind of support, because it'll be clearer in terms of where the areas that a student might need support in. So it's all part of that sort of this changeover that we're moving in that direction.
So I think how we spin it is important. And then I'll combine the last two questions. One would be, how many kids are now taking VLAX in high school compared to what they had been doing? And are we figuring out why they're doing it? And how is their re-entry to our curriculum? And then the other piece of that, perhaps, is our statistics are good, and I applaud. We're getting kids into higher level courses. We're doing well with testing. But then again, we are Oyster River, and we're starting with, the Yankees and Red Sox pay base, and we're not starting with the Milwaukee Brewers or whatever. So we're expecting this as well. And sorry for the analogy, but I think certainly we want to be high.
Milwaukee is in first place right now, by the way.
Sorry. I know, but the point is, are we looking? Are we really reaching out again? And it's communication. Are we identifying where kids are having problems and getting that input? So, because we've heard your success stories, but we haven't heard from you, where are our weaknesses? Where are we going awry? And for a report to be complete, it'd be nice to also hear, these are real trouble areas that we're trying to address, and I didn't hear that in your report, but and that's not a criticism, but I think it's important to acknowledge. I don't mean to be snarky, I'm sorry.
It's quite all right. I'm a Milwaukee Brewers fan, so I don't take it personally. In terms of areas that we're really trying to focus on, I think one of the things that in the middle school, there really are 2 points where things, the bar goes up and we see a breaking point for kids either being successful or less successful. Certainly 8th grade, when where a student is at that point and how they're feeling about mathematics as they enter that 8th grade choice between algebra and pre-algebra is one of those points. One of the things that we're trying to do by looking at the 6-12 sequence is when we do a deep, rich Common Core experience, the idea is that we're working with kids very early on to get them thinking algebraically, get them heading down that road with the idea that we're differentiating within the classroom all along the way, with the idea that kids are getting challenged with advanced experiences, but they're also having deficiencies in their math skill identified and remediated over time. So the idea is that we're more and more kids are getting to where they need to be. So at that 8th grade point, that is, we know that's a key point. So when we made the point about having 112 kids in algebra versus 73 4 years ago, we know that's a critical juncture in the math sequence. Because it's not just about whether you do algebra, it's about how you feel about yourself as a mathematician, and that is the point where a lot of kids are struggling. So we're trying to identify that. The other point in the sequence, which we definitely see a struggle, is when kids are making that jump from Algebra 2 to what we would call the highest end of our math sequence, whether they're going into pre-calculus or finite or trig or AP stats. And what we're trying to do is to make sure, and this is a lot of what Mahesh Sharma really talked to us about, is to make sure that you really emphasize a deep, rich algebra program so that when you get kids, if kids are taught well and in a very structured and skill-based way through Algebra 2, all kids should be capable of taking all those highest-end math classes. So our goal would be to have every kid making those selections. So when we talk about expanding course offerings like concepts in applied college math and computer integrated and a history of math, and trying to offer bigger, higher end math classes for that beyond, we're really hoping that ultimately all of our kids are getting there. So those are really the two key points that we've looked at. And I think the other big issue, which we are completely aware of, is in fact, we talked about this a lot over the course of the year, is we have a PR problem. And I think it goes back to wanting to make sure we're messaging what we're doing and why we're doing it and providing that support. And I think kind of going back to what you were saying, Kenny, how we message whether a student does extra support over the summer or not. You can call it summer school and have it be punitive, or you can have it be in a supportive manner. How can we help you get to where you want to go? Which is, again, part of why when we start early on talking to kids where they want to go, we get them thinking about the course sequence they want to take, and we're starting to help them establish goals for themselves and work. And so these teachers are all very focused on developing competencies and assessments that are going to help us do that, to really differentiate what's happening in the classroom so that they're able to identify kids that are struggling and help them. And so when we point to those statistics, I agree with you. I mean, there is the Oyster River advantage. There's no doubt. Our kids arrive at school ready to learn, and we as Oyster River educators know that. But I do think it's important that we have had a pretty significant increase in our performance in the last 4 years, and it is tied into the fact that we have a very coherent K-5 program that's really been focused on for the last 3 years, and we have a coherent 6-12 program that's going to get even stronger over the course of the next few years, and we're going to see those results go up. So.
Okay. And the VLAX issue, do you want to touch on that, or?
I was going to briefly touch on that. So we are well aware that there's some kids that take VLAX that it's great and they can make up a year and skip ahead. There's another majority of kids that take VLAX Algebra 1 or VLAX Geometry as a way of, alternative to the classroom, and we haven't had great luck with merging them back into the classroom and having them be at the same level that our classroom teaching is at. So I know as a teacher in the department, a lot of my energy goes into talking a kid out of maybe taking VLAX just so that he or she doesn't necessarily take it in the classroom. There's quite a bit of value, I think, in taking the class with a teacher and getting the level of detail and rigor that we have, and we don't feel like we really have control over that in the VLAX program. So it has worked for some. We also are aware that it is creating some holes also.
Great. Okay. Thank you. We're going to have to move on, I think.
I just want a quick one, because it's important. I think that my concern and what I'd like to see as we come back potentially in the fall is really moving to, when last we left, we were approving competency going through, which again, I think what I would really like to hear is more about the relearning and are you adequately staffed? That's a budgetary concern at the middle school, and kind of an explanation of what's occurred there, because it was kind of brief. And then at the high school as well, that's a real concern of mine. If you listen to the community, what you'll hear in feedback, it's legendary. 10th and 11th grade, just circle that. And it's kids face a very difficult choice. They're looking at they look at Algebra 2 trigonometry, and they look at Algebra 2. And there's a vast gulf between those two. And so there's a pressure to try to move into that, whether it's the Algebra 2 trigonometry versus Algebra 2. And my concern really is with Math Lab and that support system. And it's that area, both 10th grade and 11th grade, there's a great need for the Math Lab to be effective at working with it. And as we expand competencies coming into the high school, that further expands the need for whatever the Math Lab or remediation is like that. So I think what we're really looking for in the report is, what is that system? How effective is it? So, how does that affect us budgetarily? So that hasn't really, I mean, while the basic structure of what you're trying to do and all that is in place, that's a really key element, because again, the entire thing you've pushed forward, and even your numbers, is like you're trying to move more kids up to higher level math. And it's like, as you move up to higher level math, it's inherent that you're going to have some kids struggle. And again, you're going to implement competencies. So is our system effective at meeting it, and robust enough to meet it? So that's the biggest concern coming out of the community. And they really don't have a clear picture, like if my kid is struggling in 10th or 11th grade math. And by the way, these are very bright kids, many of them, but they still struggle in that area. What is the effective mechanism for them to have remediation or help? So I think that's the next report that needs to come forward to us.
Thank you. Close it. So I just want to thank the math teachers who've been working all year long on this, but I also want to recognize, some of the work that has gone on in the last 5 years. We are, even with the Oyster River Advantage, we did not have any increasing math scores for the first 3 years I was here. They were flat, and we weren't the second best in the state. We were the 5th best in the state. So the work that these educators have done on behalf of our students has really moved the bar for us. So I would go back to something and paraphrase something Al said. Even the brightest kids need support, and these educators get that. The K through 5 math program, they've gotten it. The middle school has gotten it. The high school is getting it. We are really moving the bar forward. We know what our limitations are. Part of it is making sure that we are remediating kids when they need it, for sure. The other piece is making sure that the entire faculty is on the same page, and that's the work that these people did for us this year. They've articulated what that same page is, so that every educator, 6 through 12, can then say to kids, if you're interested in engineering, go boom, boom, boom. If you're interested in statistics, go boom, boom, boom. If you're interested in... So all of our educators essentially take on a counseling role as they get to know these students. So kudos to all of you for the great work you've done and the great work you still have to do, because as you heard tonight, there's a lot of work that you already knew about, but hearing from the board and from the community gives you the kind of support you need, because they're behind this work, and we've had such progress in the last 2 years in particular, seeing the student growth. It's just been totally miraculous, because we've broken through so many barriers. We still have some to go, but wow, you guys did great, and thank you so much for tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Superintendent's report?
Yeah, I'll try to be really super brief. So, it's been about 15 days since we met as a school board, and I think I've seen Denise 15 times. It has been an amazing 3 weeks in the school system. If anybody wondered whether we were a math-only school system, that would have been dispelled in the last 3 weeks. We have had so many arts experiences, humanities experiences. It has truly been awe-inspiring, from the Power of One to the science exhibition this week to all of the musical events. The art shows were non-stop. The art shows were so phenomenal. It has been an amazing 3-week period where literally even on Friday this week we'll be out with the students on graduation. The one thing that hasn't been said tonight that I really want to share with the board is the high school is starting a new tradition tomorrow. And it's the first of its kind in the district where the seniors will be walking through the elementary and middle schools, middle schools, because Barrington. So they're all going to start at the Oyster River Middle School if they attended there. They're going to walk through the entire school. All of the middle school kids, grades 5 through 8, will be in the hallways, cheering them, celebrating their success. And then the Barrington kids will go to their middle school and elementary school, and they'll walk through the Barrington school. The Mohammed kids will head over to the Mohammed school, and they'll walk through the entire Mohammed school, and then Mass Way. So we're really excited by this. What's the purpose? To inspire our K through 8 students to do as well as our seniors who are graduating, to give them role models, to make them feel proud and see what happens when you get to the end of the road as a senior. So kudos to the high school administration and counseling staff who is making this happen. Kudos to our principals. I mean, think about for Jay, going back to the middle school issue, he has to figure out how he can get all of the graduates through a building when at least 2 of the graduates are handicapped in a building that's not handicapped designed. And he's figured it out, and Jay always figures things out. But it's going to be an amazing day tomorrow for our K through 8 students and for our seniors, and I couldn't be prouder of that effort. So I'll stop there because I think everything else has been said tonight.
Business Administrator? No? Student Center report?
Well, I think everything that I wanted to say has been touched upon. But
Stole your thunder.
yeah, so obviously graduation is this Friday at Ludholm Gymnasium at UNH starting at 6. And so the seniors had their first graduation rehearsal today and one more on Friday. And I don't know if any of you guys heard, but the senior class trip to Six Flags was canceled yesterday because of the rain, which the seniors were disappointed about, but they made the best of it. And then tomorrow they walk the halls of their old elementary and middle schools. And then you guys have all talked about the award ceremony, actually, we have not talked about yet. That happened Monday, where, if you guys don't know, all the juniors and seniors and some sophomores and freshmen, everybody's put in all the grades are put into the gymnasium, and there's a big presentation where book awards and class awards and all these awards are given out to students, and it's really amazing to see everybody's achievements.
Including Hannah's.
Including mine. I heard you walked out right before I got my award.
Oh, no, I saw it. After you got.
Well, I'm glad to hear that. I was a little offended.
No.
Thank you. And then we haven't talked much about the senior art show last week. Did anybody manage to make it to
Yeah, that was awesome.
Absolutely.
Yeah, we have some pretty talented seniors in the art department.
Really amazing.
And then prom was 2 weeks ago, and it was a huge success. The junior class made a lot of money. I'm not sure exactly how much. And the venue was beautiful, and everybody seemed to have a really good time. And there was no trouble or anything. Nothing bad happened, which was good. And then the Student Senate just ran elections last week, and the school had a huge amount of students interested in government. The freshman class, we had, I think, 10 people running for Student Senate, and there's 4 positions, and there's never been that many people running for positions, and there's nearly every student voted for a position. It was incredible, because I've been on the student government this will be my 4th year going into my senior year, and I've never seen this much enthusiasm for the student government. And then, as you might have heard walking in, the Mouth of the River was hosting their final coffee house of the year, where they have students perform, and they have their 4th magazine, the last one of the year, which, if anybody wants my copy, I can get more tomorrow, because the students who write this are truly talented in writing and photography, and there are a lot of interesting articles in the magazine. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Okay, moving on to board goals. You have a first draft of board goals, if you take a look at those. just an idea of kind of how these are structured. I think we've taken the cue from Al, saying that there are a number of initiatives that are kind of ongoing, and rather than to pile on a bunch of new initiatives, maybe a focus of this year could be monitoring things that we've initiated in the previous years. And so that's 1 through 6 are essentially goals that are continuing from previous years. The 2 big action goals that are either new or they've been fairly dormant would be to begin working on the strategic plan, although the major work will be starting in 2018. So it won't start, but the planning will start this year.
We'll plan to plan.
They're planning to plan. And then probably, at least in my view, the biggest goal is to really engage the community, engage ourselves with the issue of the middle school, which is goal number 8. I'm not sure exactly why all this is special emphasis on, well, foreign language is special emphasis in the high school, whether that should all stay in there. But so what I think that I propose is we talk about this. We don't have we're fairly late into the evening already, but comments on this, then come back the next meeting to vote on them. I don't think we have to have these set tonight unless people are actually ready to do that. The next 2 weeks wouldn't make much difference. So would that seem reasonable? Okay, so comments on this, things that are missing, things that are worded, should be reworded.
So, 1 through 5, I guess, really, we're talking a lot about reports. And I know Jim last year put together kind of an action plan, and I think it's been really good, especially like things that have occurred in the district, getting information out to the community. But I think when we look at those, what we're really looking at is more of an interaction. We're not just giving information out to the community, although that's part of it, but we're also collecting information from the community. And what I know we've stopped it, but what I really would like to see is over the summer, because it's difficult during these meetings to have a prolonged discussion, is to put together a working group to discuss how we really are collecting and analyzing information in those reports. And we could come back in the fall with an idea of how we can be effective in that and have a more targeted discussion for the board.
So what kind of information are we talking about?
Well, again, I'm trying, like, when each of these things that you're doing is how are you collecting the information? I mean, the past one has been like forums, or is it just talking with teachers? So I think it's really how we're interacting or how we're collecting that information. And so what kind of information? Well, we already know what the information is because we've said what the topics are, but it's really more of a mechanism of how we're gathering that information.
So do you think that's part of an action plan that,
Right.
I think it is. I mean, if you had a small working group that allows us over the summer to have some discussions about it, then you can come back in the fall with more of an idea of how we'd attack it, and then the board would really approve that plan.
Okay. Yeah.
There are several of these, 1, 2, and 7, where the goal is to authorize something, or to authorize the administration to do something. I feel like that doesn't feel motive enough to me. I think the goal is to do those things. The goal is, in number 1, to evaluate and report on the effects of change in start time.
Okay.
Just authorizing.
Okay. Okay.
Right.
So just to cut out the to authorize.
Yeah.
To evaluate.
To evaluate and report on the event. But we have to say who it is that's, and maybe that's getting back to Al's point, is who is it that's evaluating and reporting?
So you could say task the administration to evaluate, or whatever word.
Okay.
Michael, did you have a substitute for that?
I would have just removed it altogether and said the goal is to evaluate and report on homework.
Just, okay.
Yeah.
Drop, I thought authorize.
But who's evaluating and reporting?
Well, these are our goals, right? So, I mean, if it's not something we're doing, should it be here? Are these your goals or these our goals?
Yeah, they're your goals for the district, but in the end, they become my operational goals because you guys don't have the capacity to, quote unquote, do work. You guys authorize the work to be done. That's why we use the word authorize. But the responsibility of getting the work done shifts to me and then the staff as a whole. That's why I use the word authorize, Michael. But it doesn't have to be there. I mean, it's implied, certainly. So they're your goals for the district, they're my goals to implement.
Kenny?
Thank you for putting all these together. Just going down the list, in the first one on start time, I think another important group we need to figure out the impact is parents, because in our discussion that was one of our concerns, is how it was going to affect family dynamics.
Yeah, okay.
In 2, with homework, I would like us to be a little bit more specific in what we're looking at with homework, because I think that includes kind of the amount of the assigned work, the learning value of the assigned work, and I think the other big piece of that is the coordination between classes of the assigned work. What I've heard from concerned parents is there's a week their kid has nothing, and there's a week their kid is slammed. So just to be more specific on that. 3, I'm fine, and 3A and B, I'm fine. 4, with the communication, and I mean, there is that special emphasis on high school parents. I think one of the things that we really need to always be cognizant of is that statistic of how many people live in our district, pay taxes in our district, and have no connection to the school except for the taxes they pay. And I think that always needs to be an incredible priority that we're communicating to everyone.
Why would that be just in 3, though?
No, it's 4.
Oh, I'm sorry, I had the wrong one, sorry.
Okay. In 4.
Okay.
Which is why we did the newsletters this year.
Yeah,
that kind
that's a
of
good
thing.
point, yeah.
5, I don't know if we want to, certainly we want to talk about how foreign language has gone down with what we've done. Is it time to start to think about growing? So that's the thing.
So, I mean, I'm not sure why I don't remember putting a special emphasis on the high school for foreign language, because, I mean,
Shouldn't the emphasis be on the middle school, because that's where we're implementing a new program?
Middle school is where it's been emphasized, but I think we want to hear how it's worked. But then the second piece is, where do we go from here? Do we just keep it the same for a while?
The idea, it could have stopped at the middle school, but I think what happened was when we started talking to the world language teachers, the high school saw the impact on them, and they wanted to be getting ready for that impact as we build a more robust program in the middle school. So all of the points that you're making, Ken, are all great points, and all are really the action strategy pieces that Al had pointed out. So those all could be built into action strategies.
Okay. 6, of course I support that greatly. I think that we still have to keep community there too. I mean, I think getting the student body, I think that's maybe where we could really maybe improve, but I think we got to keep the community aspect there. 7 and 8, I'm great, and being the brokered record that I am, I think our transportation system has to be looked at. Leaving my house yesterday morning, I couldn't get out of my driveway for 10 minutes because of the backup going to the middle school. It doesn't fit our sustainability goal. It doesn't make for economics of our bus system. And I think we really, the words I have is to evaluate our current bus transportation model and look for changes that might increase ridership, reduce travel time, and support our goal of sustainability. Somehow we're missing the boat with transportation.
I think that whether this is a good reason or not, I think the reason we didn't, when discussing it, we felt that there was this huge transportation issue of adjusting the start time that's already on the plate right now, and that next year should be getting that straight. And so to put another transportation issue on the table would be maybe overloading that issue.
And I totally accept that, and that's fine for me. The only thing I guess I would say is I look at goals not being one-year goals. And a lot of these things, of course, the middle school, which is many, many years, but a lot of our goals are going to transcend years. So we start processes, and then we continue to build on them, kind of just like we're even doing with math at this point. So I don't expect us to have a finished product, but just to start some conversations, that's all.
I appreciate where you're coming from, Kenny. I think that the issue on the transportation, of doing the kind of analysis you want, will require a contracted service that we haven't budgeted for, because Lisa does not have the capacity to do that. And so it is going to require an outside service to analyze it to the level that you want and we all want. I mean, clearly, ridership is an issue in the district when you get to the aggregate, and it's about 2/3 of the kids who use the bus, K through 12, but if you look at it by division, it's quite shocking how many kids do not get on the bus by the time they're in the high school. So there are big issues there, but I think it's a budgetary issue, and I think we have to budget for it and be very articulate what we want to get out of that study. So I would say that I agree with Tom in relation to trying to get off the new busing system next year is a massive endeavor all by itself. But then to go down the path that you're talking about, I think, really is an 18-19 goal, because we have to build it into the budget.
We could, whether it be a goal or not, we could make sure that we put in the budgets money for that, to authorize us, to get that thing in motion for the next year. Because, we'd have to do that this year. That's something we'd have to do this year, right?
Yeah. Sure.
So maybe something like that at least gets it started, maybe not as fast as,
And I'm fine. I read off this list in comments, and they're dream lists. It's not like I think we have to do all this. I'm just adding dialogue.
But that's a good. If we need to pay for a study, we need to put that in the budget. We need to be thinking about that now, or thinking about those.
I think also as we work through the strategic planning process, it'll become more clear how important that is relative to the other things that we're looking at for the future beyond negotiating start times.
Yeah, I was going to say, the thing that Kenny's talking about, since I have a middle schooler in periodic it's a cultural issue kind of thing. And I think that, we can authorize the study, but I don't think we really need to authorize the study. I think it really is a discussion, or how do you change that culture of kids dropping their kids off at school? And if we can have somebody pay somebody to do that, but any parent who's at the middle school can tell you a lot of the things. And I think that's more of some kind of a dialogue or discussion we're going to have between parents and us and that. So
Well, yeah, I don't disagree with that either, Al, but I don't think it's as simple.
No, I know,
it's a very complex issue.
It's a complex issue.
And you're absolutely right. You've got a cultural phenomenon in the district that is butting up against what I would consider common sense. Let your child get on the bus, it's there for them, it's almost door to door. But there's a cultural issue in our district that starts in a serious way in the middle school.
And a structural, because that is a bottleneck, a natural bottleneck. I guess theoretically, one of the discussions you could have is, hey, could you, after the buses have left, can you pick up around the back and kind of alleviate some of that, or drop? Again, I think there's a bunch of discussions that can be had about how to alleviate that bottleneck.
So I don't want anybody to leave here thinking we haven't had these discussions in the last 5 years, but you have a physiological, geographic bottleneck that is what really impacts Baghdad. And not to get ahead of ourselves, but when we start to look at drafts on the middle school, that's got to be addressed as part of the issue, because how many people would notice that number of parents were dropping off their kids if the road leading out to Baghdad wasn't so short, and therefore it was impacting both sides of the traffic coming from the Madbury Road and from the Baghdad Road. So we could have study after study. We already know that's a real problem. But the potential design of a middle school could address that issue.
Right.
and needs to.
Totally agree. It's structural, it's cultural, but you can't lose sight. Something's not working, that a parent feels that it's worthwhile for them to sit in a line for 20, 25 minutes, because that's when they start to line up, to wait then for their kid to come out and leave. So I think that it's three things.
So Todd and I don't even drive to the middle school at 1:30. If we have a meeting at the middle school at 2 o'clock, we walk. Because you can't get near the middle school starting at 2 o'clock.
I was going to add it's a safety issue, actually, because the traffic backs up onto Madbury Road. It's really blocking traffic. So, and then people trying to merge in, it's kind of crazy. So it really is a safety issue that needs to be looked at.
And we have a no idling.
So should it be a goal, or, I mean...
No,
I really think we need to do it from the perspective of preparing for 18, 19. I mean, I think that's the work that we have in front of us. Make sure we've got enough money to cover a study, because we are going to have to hire a professional to look at it, even in relation to these three issues we brought up. You know, the groundbreaking work would be what are the questions we want a consultant to address in the study, and that is something we could do in terms of framing out what the work would be.
Other?
I just wanted to point out that, and I know it's just, a word, but transportation is included in one. The impact on students. Now we're going to add the word parents and transportation. So there is, and because I really do, I think it's going to be interesting to see how the change in the start time, does it have any impact or not? So anyway, that's all I wanted to say about that.
On item 4 related to communication, I think there might be still an opportunity to make sure we're using the right channels. I think that we're still not hitting, we talked about this a little bit in terms of the fraction of the population that's not involved in the school community directly, but even within the school community, there's different kinds of information that need to be communicated different ways, whether it's the stuff that is emergent issues that need to be communicated right away versus events that are coming up that we want folks to be well publicized versus policy things that come out of this group. So I think there is some work to do to understand what the communication path should be, not just to continue exactly what we were doing.
Well, I think, didn't you say there's an effort to use Twitter more effectively?
We actually, in our administrative retreat, one of the things we've never touched in the district in any significant way is Twitter. The Twitter account allows you to communicate directly to anybody and their neighbor, but unlike Facebook, where you get these broadside kind of responses, in Twitter, they're responding to you. So instead of this anonymous kind of amorphous, you can't grab onto it communication, it becomes, if you put a communication out and you do your attachment and somebody has a question about the late start, they respond to the Twitter, it comes back to the person who sent the Twitter. And so we have a workshop with the administrators on the 28th around that, trying to utilize a different social media that might prove more beneficial in a two-way communication to our parents and to our community. So the way Facebook works, I don't even get on Facebook, to be honest with you, because it's just a deluge of responses and sometimes totally fabricated, issues that I have no idea where, that position came to. I dealt with it this weekend at Madbury Day, where I was talking to a parent and they thought that we had hired uncertified staff. And I said, where did you get that? And she said, it was on Facebook. And I said, let me assure you that the school board expects me to hire the best candidates possible, and everybody we hire is certified. She said, can I put that on my Facebook page? I said, feel free. So you're absolutely right, Michael. It's not just identifying channels, it's making sure that people can get back to the right voice to get their questions. So often, people don't even make a phone call, and they know our numbers. These are people we know, and yet they're still going to Facebook and putting whatever information they think is right without validating any of it. So I think that Twitter will offer us a vehicle for somebody to say, can you clarify this, or this is a great approach, or because it's going to come back to the administrator or the classroom teacher for that matter. So we're going to encourage through this workshop, a skill set around that. And we're not going to abuse the president's sort of.
So could we just add then, under number 4, to continue to use various media channels and explore new avenues?
Yeah, absolutely. Great.
So we'll just add that phrase.
But I also want to just remind everybody that no matter how many times we communicate and no matter how many vehicles we use for communication, there will always be somebody who said, I didn't know that.
Yeah. That's
So-
true. That's true.
It's never a finished
I
product.
was just going to say, I mean, the interesting thing about that is that, and I've just been talking to people, some of the most important initiatives we've put in, they don't really have a clear idea of what we've done. And I mean, again, the idea is I'm almost, when you look at the community, it's like asking the community, how are you missing this, or how can we be more effective, is one of the avenues. Because again, I'm just shocked with the middle school, people that had no idea about competencies, and we've talked about it like ad nauseum. And it's just trying to find out how we can be, and Twitter is a good idea, and especially a way that they can get to you more directly. But I think that way in which engaging the community and talking with them about how is a more effective mechanism to get that interaction is an interesting conversation.
So, I don't want to. People give some.
Can I just throw one more on?
Oh, sure.
On an unrelated item. This is more of a question for those of you who've been closer to the wellness and mental health issues in the past, or the work that's been done around wellness and mental health. Do we have specific areas we still want to work on within that realm, or specific ideas? This goal feels very broad to me. And I think
So that's where the action plan will come in underneath it.
Okay.
Yeah, they're very, very definitely specific. If you went to the social studies piece that Denise talked about, or even the science piece that happened this week, there is still a tremendous amount of interest on our student body around mental health issues. And, part of the emphasis for this upcoming school year would be to elicit that student voice, because our first full-fledged foray into mental health and wellness was this year. And so it was directed more by the adult voice. And in the second year, we want to get the student voice involved. And suicide is still an issue that's on the front end of on the front burner, Michael. Making kids aware of outlets for, their ability to communicate effectively what their concerns are. There's just, Heather McAnuff in the counseling department has worked tirelessly on this issue since it became a priority of the board 2 school years ago. And will continue to be. I think it's going to be one of those goals like communication, that each year there'll be a new subset, a new focus. The youth risk survey results, we still have to have a workshop with our parental community on what that means. And, there's a disconnection between the students reporting on that and what the parents believe that the kids are doing. And so, if you talk to, for example, any high school parent, they'd say, oh, I have a great relationship with my kid. That is true. But they assume that means that their child is talking to them about sensitive issues. And according to that report, they're not. They're talking to either other children or they're talking to somebody in this building. And so that's an important piece of parental communication that we have to build.
And with that, you mentioned suicide, and as a primary care doctor, if a patient of mine has a heart attack, to me, I failed. And there are things along the way that should have had intervention. And
right.
The power of one that night, I was taken by how many students chose mental health issues as